Congratulations, you have found the Badass Boundaries Breakthrough. In this video, if you struggle with boundaries, I don't care if you've struggled your whole life, you will get a breakthrough about boundaries and how to have better boundaries in your life. I don't care if you've read Cloud and Townsend's Boundaries 10 times, 20 times, you will get, it's a great book, by the way, but it did not tell you what I'm going to tell you in this video, which is how to formulate great boundaries. There was stuff they left out. It was great at the time. It's a great book, but there's stuff they left out, and you will get a breakthrough in this video. It's called the Badass Boundaries Breakthrough, and I was going to call it BBB, but I was pretty sure that I'd get a letter from the lawyers from the Better Business Bureau telling me to cease and desist because they probably have decent boundaries. And I decided I'll just call it the Badass Boundaries Breakthrough. And who am I? I'm Daniel Robertson. If you want to learn more about me, you can go to danielrobertson.com, find out about me. I'm an attorney turned relationship coach. And why? Well, I used to have terrible boundaries in my own life. And it did not serve me well in my relationships, and it did not serve me well in my career. So I had to learn this stuff. I had to learn it, and I've taken everything I've learned and I put it in this video. This video is going to cover basically everything you need for great boundaries. So I hope you stick around. I hope you watch it all the way to the end. You will learn a lot. Okay, what are boundaries? Have you heard boundaries are the way we teach people how to treat us? Boundaries are how we control our sphere in our life. We have control over ourself, our property, our possessions, our choices. So that's how we control. So it's kind of like owning a home. And some people like to put a fence around their home. A fence is a boundary. It tells you, don't come within this fence unless, well, what would I like you to do? Use the gate. Don't come in unless I give you permission. And we get to decide what permission we give people. If you want to come in my fence, these are the rules within my fence. Please don't step on my flowers. If you use my hose, roll it up and put it back. And we get to decide who we let into our house. And if we let people inside our house, we get to decide what are the rules inside our house. Is it okay with us if our friends come in and just go to the refrigerator and grab something to drink, something to eat? Or would we prefer that they ask us permission before just going and doing that? You get to decide the rules for your sphere of control. You get to decide where you let people and what the rules are within that area. What we do not get to decide is if we have a neighbor across the street and they want to paint their house pink, well, that's their house. They get to decide what they do at their house. And if you're not okay with that, then maybe you choose, okay, I'm going to live in an area where we have an HOA that has rules and we have CC&Rs because I don't want to just control myself. I also want to control these other people. Okay, well, if you're in a community and everybody agrees to those set of rules, you get to do that. Okay, so that's basically what boundaries are. What else do you need to know about boundaries? Where I want to start is the number one mistake people make with boundaries. The number one mistake people make is about how they know or how they measure whether they have good boundaries or not. The number one mistake that people make is they measure whether they have good boundaries based on whether the other person's behavior changes. They measure whether they have good boundaries based on whether the other person's behavior changes. Boundaries are not good or bad based on whether the other person's behavior changes. So how do we know if we have good boundaries? You know if you have good boundaries if you no longer feel resentful, frustrated, irritated, upset, exhausted. If you feel those things, it's because you don't have good boundaries in place. Your boundaries are not good enough. Your boundaries are there to protect yourself, your energy, how you feel. And if you feel angry, frustrated, upset, resentful, irritated, if you feel that way, it's because your boundaries are not good enough yet. So how do you know if you have good boundaries? If you have good boundaries, you are going to feel well rested, well cared for. You're going to feel happy. You're going to feel empowered, and you're going to feel confident. If you have good boundaries, you are going to feel happy, empowered, confident, well taken care of, well rested. So that's how you measure whether you have good boundaries. All right. That's the number one mistake. And we can sum it up. You've probably heard this before. Boundaries are not about controlling or changing another person. That's not what boundaries are about. Boundaries are about what we will do. Boundaries are about controlling the things that we can control. That's what boundaries are about. And we protect ourselves. We use boundaries to protect ourselves from just excessive use of energy or people taking advantage of us, right? Or doing things that we just don't want them to do. We just don't want them to do it. So why do boundaries matter? Okay, I'm using a tennis court analogy. This comes from one of my favorite authors, Dr. Becky Kennedy. She wrote one of my all-time favorite books on parenting, which is called Good Inside. And she uses this analogy of a tennis court. A tennis court means that we have responsibility for the things on our side of the court, and other people have responsibility for the things on their side of the court. And what happens? Sometimes people they try to move the net, try to pull it back toward them so that now we start taking responsibility for things on their side of the court. Sometimes this happens because people are taking advantage of us, or they just have poor boundaries, or just they lack respect for other people. Sometimes it happens because we let them do it. They're not trying to take advantage of us. We didn't even tell them that, hey, that's not something I can take responsibility for. And sometimes we try to pull the net back toward ourselves and try to get other people to take responsibility for things that are on our side of the court. And if we get other people, if we try to do that, we are now taking advantage of other people. What's an example of this? I'm going to give you an example that's one that really irks me. And this one is, there's a woman I know, she's got multiple young kids. And, I work with a lot of moms, huge respect for moms. This one particular woman has some poor boundaries. And what have I seen her do? I've seen her, she needs to go to the grocery store, or she needs to go run an errand. She goes to her mom and says, "Mom, will you please take care of my kids? Because I need to go to the store or run this errand." And the mom says, "I'm not available to take care of the kids right now. I'm doing my own things right now." And she says, "Well, how do you expect me to be able to go to the grocery store if you won't take care of my kids?" You see, she was trying to get her mom to take care of something that was not her mom's responsibility. It was her responsibility. She was trying to move the net, right? So if you're somebody, why do these boundaries matter? Because it's how we protect ourselves. It's how we take responsibility for what's ours and not for other people's stuff, what's not theirs. And it prevents us from getting taken advantage of. So if you're the person doing that, you need some better boundaries. You need a better understanding of what you're responsible for, what's on your side of the tennis court. And if somebody tries to give you something that's on your side of the tennis court, then you take your tennis racket and you send it back to them. You just send it back to their side of the court. That goes on your side of the court. You take responsibility for that. It's your responsibility. And if you're the type of person who's pulling the net back towards you and trying to get other people to take responsibility for your stuff, well, you might not have the self-awareness to even be watching a video like this, but maybe you do, and maybe you want to change. Well, this is your chance. This is your chance to have a thought about it. Give it a think and see what you want to change in your life. See how good you feel if you're not a victim. See how good you feel if you take responsibility for yourself and allow other people to take responsibility for themselves. So if you're still struggling with this after this video, you got to find out about the Courageous Love Breakthrough Experience, because this is a 10-week group coaching program where you are going to get those boundaries dialed in. You're going to get them dialed in. So you can go to danielrobertson.com and find out about the Courageous Love Breakthrough Experience to go deeper into boundaries and really put this into practice with coaching to help you get that done. Okay, so you need a better understanding, and this is what it's about. This is about a better understanding of what you're responsible for and what you're not responsible for. Okay, you are responsibility for your ideas, beliefs, feelings, words, behavior, choices, actions, habits, efforts, planning, mistakes, and the consequences of your actions. What are you not responsible for? You're not responsible for other people's ideas, beliefs, feelings, words, behavior, choices, actions, habits, efforts, planning, mistakes, or the consequences of other people's actions. Now, sounds nice, right? It sounds, oh, this is so simple. I just take responsibility for my stuff, and they just take responsibility for their stuff, and I don't, right? I send that tennis ball back to their side of the court. But it's not really that simple, is it? Because there's overlap. And this gets tricky in the overlap. And that's why boundaries are really much more of an art form than they are a science. So, what do I mean? I'll give you 2 examples to show where this gets tricky. Okay, I'm responsible for my actions and the consequences of my actions, and they are responsible for their feelings, right? We're not responsible for other people's feelings. Maybe you've heard people say, nobody can make somebody feel a different way. Well, that's not true. Okay, we know that's not true. Okay, so if I go to some guy, it could be a guy on the street, it could be a friend, it could be anybody, and I intentionally insult him, intentionally try to make him angry or upset or offended, and he now becomes offended. Now, his taking offense to my insult, those are the consequences of my actions that are affecting his feelings. So who's responsible for that? Well, the answer is we both are. To an extent, we both are. I'm partially responsible for his feelings because I just went and insulted him, causing him to take offense. So I'm partially responsible for him taking offense. Okay? Now he's got the offense. What's he going to do? He has to now take responsibility for the way he feels and figures out what he wants to do about it. And if I offend him, let's say I did something more serious. Let's say I ran my car into his car. My actions, I'm responsible for my actions and the consequences of my actions. My actions caused damage to his car. I'm now responsible for fixing it. Even though it's not my property, it's his property that he's responsible for, but I'm responsible for fixing it because the natural consequences of my actions were to cause the damage. So you see how there's some tricky overlap. I'm not necessarily responsible for other people's feelings or other people's property, but what if I did something and the consequences of my actions had a natural effect on those things? Let's give a different example. Let's say Karen goes to a comedy show and everybody at the comedy show is having a great time, and the comedian tells a joke and Karen gets offended. Is that the comedian's responsibility or is that Karen's responsibility? Who's responsible for Karen's feelings in that scenario? I would say that Karen's responsible for her feelings. She went to the comedy show. Yes, her getting offended was a consequence of the comedian telling a joke that was offensive to her, but Karen was the one who decided to go. And this can be tricky. What if everybody in the theater thought that the joke was offensive? Well, maybe it was an offensive joke, in which case the comedian has some responsibility too. You see how this is such an art form? You see how there's so much overlap and it gets tricky? It's not easy. So if you feel like you're struggling with this, that's natural. It's not easy. The skill that you need to learn, the knowledge that you need to be successful, is to know When do I take responsibility and when do other people take responsibility? And if you did not learn that from your parents, your teachers, your caregivers, if you didn't have that modeled for you, you didn't learn that in the past, it's going to take some time to learn. And you're going to need to rely on other people to help you figure out what's right, what should you take responsibility for, and what shouldn't you. Okay? All right, I hope that makes sense. What else do you need to know? Boundaries have consequences. So when we are putting boundaries into place, just realize we have consequences. So if we have very weak boundaries, which I will talk about in a moment, if we have weak boundaries, that's going to mean that we have the risk that people will take advantage of us. That's the consequence. If we have rigid boundaries, that means that maybe we're putting up walls and keeping people out who want to love us, want to help us, want to take care of us. So the consequence of our boundaries, if we have too rigid boundaries, is keeping out good things, right? Maybe they're protecting us, so it's serving a purpose, but it's also keeping out good things at the same time if they're too rigid. So your boundaries have consequences. What are some examples? Boundaries can be too weak. What does that mean? One of my favorite examples of this is Dr. Robert Glover. Does an exercise. He works with guys who are kind of overly nice guys, people pleasers, and who lack good boundaries. So he does an exercise with them in his office. He puts a string on the ground, like this string here. You could see kind of a line in the sand too would be another good analogy, because if our boundaries are just like a line in the sand and somebody can just mess it up and move it and it's just easy. It's not a line in the concrete, right? But a line in the sand where it's easy to just mess it up or move it. That might be a little too weak in some cases. So what Dr. Robert Glover does with his clients is he puts a string on the ground and he tells these men who he's working with, who are struggling with being people pleasers, he tells them, okay, I'm going to cross over this line. This is your boundary. I'm about to step over your boundary and push you. What are you going to do? And he got a variety of different responses from his different clients. Some clients would actually take a step back to create room to allow him to cross the boundary. Some clients, when he crossed over their boundary, they would step back and they would let him push them all the way back to the wall before pushing back. Maybe they never push back. Other clients, once they have more healthy, well-developed boundaries, a more well-developed sense of, a healthy sense of self-esteem, when they were in that place, and he said, this is your boundary, I'm about to cross over your boundary and push you, the healthy clients take a step forward, put their toes right up to the boundary. They tell him, do not cross my boundary. And as soon as he starts to push them, they push back and protect their boundary. So sometimes our boundaries can be too weak. Other times our boundaries can be too rigid. This is when we put up walls. This is when we're guarded. And this is when we keep people out. Some people have such rigid boundaries. You know, the example I always think of is the woman from the movie Home Alone 2, the woman with the pigeons. And he goes up there up in the top of the church and she says, you know, I had my heart broken and so I never let anybody in. And Kevin McAllister, Macaulay Culkin's character, he says, you know, I had some rollerblades and I was so afraid of them getting hurt that I never even used them. And then by the time I went to the time to use them, I had grown out of them and I never got to. It's like you get one chance, right? Are you gonna open up? Are you going to be willing to take a chance? So what I like to tell my clients when they have boundaries that are too rigid, their walls are too high, they won't let anybody in, so much so that yes, they're protecting themselves, but they're also keeping good stuff out. I'm like, can you tell people how to find the door? Can you put a door in your wall and say, if you follow these guidelines, that will allow me to allow you in while keeping myself safe at the same time. So can I ask you to please use this doorway if you want to interact with me, if you want to get inside my world, please use this doorway. So what that means for those clients is identify what your doorway is. Identify your doorway. Tell what are the guidelines that people need to follow for you to feel safe. And if your guidelines are too stringent, they're too tough, you're going to keep people out. But if you can be a little bit flexible, make a little bit of room, a little bit of space, test things out slowly, work up to it, then having a doorway and showing people where that door is will help you feel safe while allowing the good in. Here's one other piece of information that I love, which is that boundaries can be unilateral. We usually think of boundaries as being unilateral. We tell people, do not do this thing, do not treat me this way. A unilateral boundary. We tell people, do not raise your voice at me. Okay? A unilateral boundary. The beautiful thing is that boundaries can be collaborative as well. We can say, hey, when we're communicating and you raise your voice, that makes me feel a little bit unsafe. Can we talk about a way that you can communicate with me what you feel you need to communicate while also making sure that I feel safe in the communication? Can we work together to establish what that might look like? Great. We just work together to create a collaborative boundary. Why does this matter? Unilateral boundaries create disconnection. Just stop and think for a minute. How have you felt when people have set a boundary with you? What we think is, wow, we feel like, wow, oh, they feel offended by us or they're rejecting us. We feel disconnected in some way, right? But if we set a collaborative boundary, wow, we're working together. I'm honoring my heart while also honoring your heart at the same time. This builds connection. This builds intimacy even in friendships. It doesn't have to be just intimate relationships or romantic ones, but even in friendships with family, when we work together to collaborate, that builds connection. So boundaries can actually be used collaboratively to build connection in a relationship. It does not have to be me putting up my hand and telling you stop, telling you no. So if putting up your hand and telling people stop doesn't feel good to you, just know there is another way. You can build up this skill to build collaborative boundaries together with people in a way that builds connection and leaves you feeling good about it. Leaves you feeling strong, happy, empowered, and confident. If you want to dive deeper into that, because I'm not going to be able to go really deep into that today, but just know that this is a huge portion of what we're covering in the Courageous Love Breakthrough Experience. So if you go through that 10-week group coaching program, that's one of the areas that you're really going to be working on mastering. And we're just going to be practicing that stuff. What we do in the group is we practice. We just practice and we talk about it. And we talk about what's working and what's not working and why and what we need to change and how we can make it better and how we can feel good about it. How can we feel happy, empowered, and confident about the whole thing? So we give you those skills and we just put it into practice. Okay, so here's what a well-formulated boundary looks like. The reason why this matters so much is because remember, boundaries are not about telling other people what to do. They're telling other people what we will do. So if we formulate boundaries this way, this will help to make sure that we are thinking about it the correct way. Well-formulated boundaries. If this happens, I will this. If I get tired, I will make sure that I get 7 or 8 hours of sleep that night. If I get thirsty, I will make sure that I'm drinking enough water and not just drinking soda and coffee and other substances all the time. If you raise your voice at me, I will hang up the phone. If somebody asks me to volunteer for one more project and my schedule is already full and I'm going to be left feeling exhausted, I will say no. I'm not going to let other people's requests dictate my entire life so that I feel like I have no control over my own life and I'm exhausted all the time. So if something happens, I will take an action. Take an action that's within our control. So what does this mean? Poorly formulated boundaries are, please don't talk to me in that tone of voice. Why is it poorly formulated? Because we don't know what's going to happen and we might get confused about what's supposed to happen if somebody does that. Please don't come to my house. Please don't take your brother's candy. Okay, those are poor formulations. What are some better formulations? If you continue to talk to me in that tone of voice, I will hang up the phone. We know very clearly. We're thinking about it the correct way. I'm controlling what's within my control, and it's in something that I have responsibility for. If you come into my house, I will call the police. If you take your brother's candy, you will lose your candy. So this is in a parent-child relationship, right? Right? This is a parent-child relationship where we don't control other people's candy. We don't control other people's property. But if we're a parent, then we do control our children's property to an extent, right? That's why that's okay. Otherwise, if it was an adult and we said, if you don't do what I want, then I'm going to take your candy, well, now that's somebody taking responsibility for something that's not theirs and trying to control somebody else. So yes, boundaries set limits, but you can't control what another person does or doesn't do. So boundaries don't control another person. Boundaries, this is the key, boundaries actually empower another person. I say they get to choose their own adventure. If you continue to talk to me in that tone of voice, I will hang up the phone. Now they get to choose their own adventure. Do they want to find out whether I'm going to follow through and hang up the phone? Or do they want to speak in a respectful tone of voice and then we continue talking? They get to choose. It's empowering to them. They now have a choice. They now know what they can do to be in our life, right? If we just put up walls and we say, I'm not going to talk to you, now that person has no idea what to do to interact with us in a respectful way. Right? This empowers them to know what do they need to do to treat me in a way that leaves me feeling good and is respectful to me. So boundaries, when boundaries are done right, effective boundaries are not manipulative, but we'll talk about what that means. When do they become manipulative or controlling? Maybe you remember Jonah Hill. Sorry to drag Jonah Hill through this again. He's been criticized enough. But him telling his girlfriend, hey, if you keep posting bikini pictures, I don't remember exactly what he said, but if you keep posting bikini pictures on your Instagram account, then I'm not going to be in a relationship with you. Okay. There was a lot of confusion about the way he communicated it, and the way he communicated it sounded, whether he intended it this way, I suspect that maybe he didn't intend it this way, but it kind of sounded like he was trying to control what she posted on her Instagram account rather than just taking responsibility for himself. Okay? So that was a situation that could have been seen as being kind of controlling of another person. So when boundaries become manipulative or controlling is when we try to tell another person what they have to do with things that are their responsibility and not ours. If we try to tell another person what to do with their time, energy, money, or their possessions or resources, we're now being manipulative or controlling. So if you don't give me $100, I won't talk to you for a month. We're trying to control what somebody else does with their $100. If you don't let me use your computer, I will never forgive you. We're trying to use emotional manipulation to get somebody to do something with their property. If you don't call me every morning, I will break up with you. Okay, we're trying to get somebody else to do something with their time. There's nothing wrong with asking, hey, will you please call me every morning? I feel really loved when you call me every morning. There's nothing wrong with asking for that, but if we're just threatening a breakup, trying to emotionally manipulate somebody, if we don't really mean it, and we're just trying to emotionally manipulate them into doing something with their time, that's manipulative. So we're just going to run through a bunch of examples. Is this making sense? I'm going to give you a bunch of examples so you really get this dialed in. Okay, example number 1. If you yell at me, I will leave the room and come back when you're able to talk without yelling. Great boundary. I'm telling them not to yell at me, and what's going to happen is I'm going to leave the room. If you want, this is how you need to treat me if you want to talk to me. I will leave the room and I'll come back when you're able to talk without yelling. Great boundary. Number 2, if you won't make an effort to buy me gifts, I'll break up with you because gifts is my love language. Okay, this is another example. What do you think? The way it's communicated sounds kind of manipulative and controlling. Maybe we could say, hey, when I'm in a relationship, my love language, I just want you to know my love language is gifts. And I want to be in a relationship with somebody who gives me gifts because that makes me feel really loved. Would you be willing to get me gifts? Like, is that something that you're okay with? And if not, we're going to have to figure out whether this relationship is really going to work. Okay, that's a different way to put it, right? That sounds very different from if you won't do this, if you won't buy me this, then I'm going to break up with you, which sounds more like a threat, more manipulative and controlling. If you won't share the burden of household chores, I will leave and end our relationship. Okay, this sounds like an ultimatum. Now, if this is this person's truth, I mean, a lot of people have been in a situation where they had a partner who put the burden of household chores all on one person. Usually the woman, let's just be honest, is expected to do the household chores. There are a lot of men, especially younger men in the millennial generation and younger, who have really stepped up and take a lot of responsibility for household chores. So that is shifting. You might disagree with me, but I'm witnessing it. I've talked with other therapists who are witnessing it. I'm a coach, by the way. I'm a relationship coach. I have relationships with a lot of therapists, and they're witnessing it. But if somebody says, "Hey, this has been going on for a long time. If you won't share the burden with me, it's my truth is that I'm going to leave this relationship. This relationship is not working for me." That's an effective boundary. You have to be able to communicate. If you're at the end of your rope, you have to be able to communicate that. That's an effective boundary. Number 4, if you disappear for 3 days without communicating, I will need to end this relationship. Again, okay, we all know communication is key for relationships, and without communication, a relationship starts to deteriorate very quickly. So if you disappear for 3 days without communicating, I will need to end this relationship. To me, it's another potential. It's not quite an ultimatum. It's kind of close to that, but this sounds like it's this person's truth. They're saying, hey, this is what it sounds like to me. Maybe you have a different perspective, and this could be phrased differently, but it sounds like an effective boundary because they're saying, I'm not trying to emotionally manipulate you. I'm telling you my truth. My truth is this relationship is not working for me. And if you just disappear and don't communicate for 3 days at a time, I'm going to need to end this relationship because it doesn't work for me. That does not sound manipulative. This person is taking control of stuff that's their responsibility, which is their choice whether to stay in a relationship with somebody else or not. Number 5, if I ask for space during a conflict, I will need to be left alone for at least an hour so I can process how I feel. Okay, this is a unilateral boundary. You're telling the other person what's going to happen. It's not collaborative, but it sounds like an effective boundary to me. This person is saying, hey, they process a little bit more slowly. They're saying that they need space when conflict happens because maybe their nervous system gets activated and dysregulated, and they need some time to kind of calm down, process how they feel before they're able to verbalize it, to be able to continue the conversation. They're asking for an hour, which sounds like a reasonable amount of time. So I'd say it's an effective boundary. Number 6, I need time for yoga 3 days a week. If I can't go in the evenings, I'll need to give up our morning coffee so I can go in the morning. Okay, so technically this is this person's responsibility. Yoga is important to them. I'd point out that the reason they're doing yoga is a strategy to get a need met. So why is yoga important? Are there other options? What if you did yoga 2 days a week and you went for a walk together 1 time a week? Is there flexibility? Would that satisfy the benefits that you're getting from yoga for you, like by taking a walk together, and also serve that other person's desire for connection? I'm just saying, is that an option, right? It doesn't have to be the solution, but can we explore different potential options? If I can't go in the evenings, I'll need to give up our morning coffee so I can go in the morning. This sounds a little bit rigid and inflexible, ironically, for somebody who goes to yoga. So what would be really helpful here is to dig a little bit deeper into what is yoga providing this person, what other solutions are available, because this is a very black and white. What other solutions are available here? Is there a way, if we have to give up morning coffee so you can go to yoga, is there another time that you'll be able to connect? And what would be really helpful here is just collaborating together. How can we make sure that you get time for yoga and we get time to connect together, whether that's connecting over morning coffee or connecting at a different time? So being collaborative and a little bit flexible would be really helpful here. Number 7, if you're going to stay in touch with your ex, I will need to access your phone so that I don't have to worry. Wow. Okay. So what's happening here? Now, I'll go on record and say that for me, I'll give my partner access to my phone because and if my partner gives me access to their phone, I can tell you I will never search through the phone. If you have problem with what's in somebody's phone, it's like you got some underlying trust things going on, but also maybe my partner's gone through experiences in the past where, yeah, they feel anxious. So yeah, I mean, it's like, yeah, you can have access to my phone because you've been hurt in the past. I'm going to show you that you can feel safe. There's nothing for you to feel worried about. That's how I would approach this, okay? But what is this issue? If you're going to stay in touch with your ex, I will need access to your phone so I don't have to worry. Well, this person's worry, their anxiety, their jealousy, that's partly their responsibility, but it's also partly their partner's responsibility because their partner's chosen to stay in touch with an ex. And for some people are okay with that in some relationships, and some people are not okay with that. So you need to see if you have compatible beliefs and values in that area. And the way that this particular statement is phrased sounds a little bit controlling. I'm going to need to be able to see your phone so that I don't have to worry. They're saying, I have these feelings, which are partly my responsibility, partly yours a little bit. And because of that, I need to control what you do with your phone, which means give me access to it. So the way it's communicated is a little bit, potentially a little bit manipulative and controlling, or maybe at least controlling, and potentially asking somebody to take responsibility for something that's not your responsibility. Collaboration would be really helpful here. And also approaching this as, hey, I appreciate you've been honest with me about you being in touch with your ex. I feel unsafe in this situation. Can we talk about a way for me to feel more safe while also honoring your needs at the same time? That would be really helpful. That would be a lot healthier, and to have a conversation. And then see if the other person's in touch with their ex and that's a deal breaker for you and that doesn't work for you, then you can say, hey, this is a deal breaker for me. This doesn't work for me. And what can you control? You could decide to leave the relationship if you've tried to collaborate, you've tried to communicate about it, and you can't find a solution. Or alternatively, maybe you feel more secure in yourself and you're like, hey, you know what? I actually trust my partner. I know I don't need to worry about that. I feel more secure in our relationship, and you can work together to achieve that together as a couple as well. So lots of options here. Collaboration would be helpful. I don't love the phrasing of this one, or trying to take control of somebody else's property. Okay, so putting it all together, was that helpful? You got like a ton right there. We're 38 minutes in. Appreciate you watching. Hopefully by now, I hope you've had at least one breakthrough, if not multiple. Okay? And I'm not going to say what's in my head right now. Okay, putting it all together. Let's put this all together. This is where a notepad, a pen, a piece of paper would be really helpful. If you're working on what boundaries should you have in your life, in your relationships, remember, how do you know if you have good boundaries? You feel happy, empowered, confident. How do you know if you need better boundaries? You feel resentful, frustrated, upset, irritated, exhausted, not well taken care of. You need better boundaries. So you want to work on boundaries in one area? Do you need better boundaries? Again, we're going to cover that in the Courageous Love Breakthrough Experience. So reach out to me if you want more information, or just go to danielrobertson.com. But ask yourself, how do you want to feel? How do you want to feel? Remember, good boundaries make you feel good. What do you want to change? So if we want to feel good, this is part of the interesting thing about boundaries is we need a strategy that works. And sometimes sometimes we think we have a good strategy, like, hey, if you if you come on my property, I'm going to call the police. And maybe that strategy doesn't work very well. Or if you talk to me in that tone of voice, I'm going to hang up the phone. Maybe that strategy doesn't work very well, so you need a better strategy, right? So make changes that actually work. Make changes that make you feel better. You need good strategies. And there's nothing to do, but you can talk to a coach like myself, you can talk to a friend, you can talk to somebody you trust and say, hey, what do you think are some possible solutions to this challenge I'm facing? What do you think would be a good strategy to help me in this situation? What would be a good boundary I could set? If this happens, I will fill in the blank, take some specific action. Okay, this is really helpful to write down. What can you control and what can't you? What's your responsibility and what isn't? You can only control yourself. Writing that down, this is going to help you develop a really good boundary. What is a possible boundary you can set? So think of some ideas. If you think there are only one option or two options, if you're thinking A and B, I promise you there's more options. So keep trying to add 3, 4, 5, 6, up to 10 different options. What possible boundaries can you set? You can control your actions. What are the possible consequences of the boundaries? So realize setting boundaries, they are going to have consequences. Setting a boundary might make the other person angry. If somebody gets angry when you set a boundary, they don't respect you. If somebody gets angry when you set a boundary, they don't respect you. They are using you. They're taking advantage of you. But it is a possible consequence that they're going to be angry. So are you in a safe situation that you're ready for that? Are you able to stand up for yourself and be ready for that? Again, we really work on self-respect. We really work on our confidence in the Courageous Love Breakthrough Experience. Boundaries can be too weak or too rigid. So if you're too weak, you're going to have consequences. If they're too rigid, you're going to have consequences. What are they? How will you communicate it? How are you going to communicate your boundary? Are you going to be unilateral in your communication? Or are you going to be collaborative? How can we honor my need while also honoring your need? How can we honor my need for connection while also honoring your need for independence? What solutions can we come up with something that works for both of us? What if they don't comply? What are you going to do if they don't comply with the boundary? Well, that's why we did well-formulated boundaries. If this happens, I will this. You already know what you're going to do if they don't comply. Now, the challenge is some folks will set a boundary and then not follow through on what they said they would do. Well, if you don't follow through on the boundary, now your boundary becomes meaningless to the other person. They don't believe you. So you have to enforce the boundary, which means you need to have a good boundary up front and you need to have the follow through with your actions on the back. But that's integrity. Okay. Was that helpful? I'll pause for a moment. You can just take notes. So yeah, pause. You could take a screenshot of this slide and answer these questions for yourself when you're setting a boundary. And if you want more help with this, do you want more? Do you want more? Did you like this? Do you want more? There's more where this came from. If you want to go deeper, we have the Courageous Love Breakthrough Experience. So what you can do is you can go over here. Can you see I guess you probably can't see my arrow on the screen, but you see right here at the top of my website, danielrobertson.com, are you ready for a breakthrough in your love life? Click here to learn more, and you're going to get some slides. You're going to get a free ebook. What is the Courageous Love Breakthrough Experience? You get a table of contents. We're going to cover what it is, who it's for, what are the results like, what's the curriculum, what will you get, what is your investment? You probably want to know the answers. Who am I? Why should you even listen to me? How will we meet? How is this going to work? Do you like logistics? You want details? You're going to get them. What if you have more questions? How can you reach me? The best way to reach me is Facebook, by the way. So go over to facebook.com/Daniel William Robertson. That's a / Daniel William Robertson. Connect with me there. And that's the best way. So, what is this about? Do you want to feel loved? Do you want to finally love yourself and know who you truly are? Do you want to stop having relationships with emotionally unavailable, selfish, or avoidant partners who can't meet your needs and leave you feeling unhappy and unfulfilled? Do you want to be confident and courageous and ready to call in your dream intimate relationship with somebody capable of loving you for who you are? Then you're in the right place. So keep reading. Find out about the Courageous Love Breakthrough Experience. It's coming in April. I talked about how I invested thousands of hours, over 80,000. You know what? I realized if I include my master's degree in dispute resolution, it's over $100,000 of investments into learning, into books, courses, seminars, therapy, coaching, to learn what actually works and what doesn't work. And after overcoming my own challenges, my own poor boundaries, anxiety, depression, all of it, low self-esteem, all of it, and gaining hundreds and hundreds of hours of coaching experience with a lot of different clients and figuring out what works and what doesn't work, I boiled all that down into 10 powerful bite-sized lessons that will change your life. It will change your life. It will forever transform how you relate to yourself and how you relate to other people. You will get a life-changing breakthrough. I hope you got a breakthrough in this video, but this is just a tiny taste. This is an hors d'oeuvre. This is a tiny appetizer of what you're going to get in the program. It's a 10-week intimate private group coaching community, a group coaching program. We meet weekly. We actually meet two weekly time slots, and I'll add a third if I get enough interest. So we covered a bunch of different time zones because we have 2 different time slots. In 10 weeks, we're going to cover the entire curriculum. And the course itself is not about teaching information. I may give you videos with information basically for free like this. You don't have to pay me for information. I gave you this whole video for free. You're not paying for information. You're paying for practice and guidance. Every hero needs a guide. I've had guides in my life, therapists, coaches, amazing people, mentors who have helped me get to where I am. Every hero needs. Luke Skywalker needed Obi-Wan Kenobi, and when Obi-Wan Kenobi had taught everything he could teach and his time was done, then it was time for Yoda, right? Harry Potter needed Hagrid to get him out of that basement, and then Dumbledore took over and turned him into a master, right? Every hero needs a guide. This is for you if you are sick and tired of feeling unworthy of love, you have an anxious, avoidant, or fearful avoidant attachment style, and you want to feel secure. You keep getting into relationships with avoidant, selfish, or emotionally unavailable partners who cannot meet your needs. You keep prioritizing everybody else's needs before your own, and you're tired of taking care of others when no one is taking care of you. Are you tired of that one-sided relationship? You've read all the books, listened to the podcasts, and watched the videos, but you're still stuck. Are you tired of being stuck? Are you learning all the information but don't know how to apply it? You're ready to be done blaming others, done complaining, done throwing a pity party for yourself. You're ready to take radical personal responsibility for your life. You're ready to enjoy the full richness of human emotion. Enjoy your experience. There's so much to enjoy, but we've numbed ourselves and blunted our emotions. Do you want deeper, loving, supportive connections with others? Possibly for the first time ever, possibly, I'm sad to say, some people get to their later in their life and have never had genuine love because all they've known is codependency. All they've known are one-sided relationships or transactional relationships. Do you want to know genuine love for the first time ever? I worked with John, came out of a terrible breakup. Now he's making over $40,000 more at his job because we've been building his confidence, and he has this beautiful, amazing, loving girlfriend. Work with Amy. She had a immature, self-absorbed husband. He wasn't paying attention to her. Got defensive anytime she tried to talk to him. Now we built her confidence, and she's building a new career. She's feels happy and secure instead of frustrated, and she's finally now her husband is actually finally leaning in and investing in the marriage. It's like, wait, what happened? Amy changed. Amy, that's not the Amy, the little shy Amy who wasn't willing to stand up for herself before. Amy's different now. We got Sarah, who thought she had a really traumatic childhood and multiple traumas, losing so many loved ones as an adult. So thought that there's no hope, right? Thinking there's no hope after all the trauma and abuse that she's suffered. And she's doing amazing. She's doing amazing. There's a video. If you want a video, send me a video, or let me know you want the fearful avoidant testimonial video, and I can send you her video. It's on YouTube, and you can just hear about how amazing she's doing. And she has a daughter, and she's setting an amazing example for her daughter. She is a cycle breaker. All of you all are cycle breakers. Here's the curriculum. I won't go over it right now, but I did another video on what the curriculum is. Here's what you get. You get live weekly group coaching, you get community, you get a workbook, you get recordings in case you missed something. You get access to video and PDF archive from the first version of this group, which was called the Courageous Love Community. It was the 1.0 version. This is the upgrade. It's going to be amazing. So much better because I learned what works and what doesn't work. And you're going to change your life. You're going to change your life. So all that has a value of $5,020, or I mean, life-changing transformation. What's the value you put on that? The program membership for the 10 weeks is $997. Information about who I am, my story, you can read that. All the details. And if you want to reach me, you can find me on Facebook. You can find me on Instagram. You can subscribe to my YouTube channel for lots of free content. And you can get free access to our Facebook group, Avoidant Attachment and Relationships. This is for people, primarily for people who have avoidant partners or loved ones and know how difficult that is. But really, we actually have many people with avoidant attachment styles who have joined the group and who are adding so much to the group. So if you do reach out to me, just know there are no high pressure sales tactics. You'll get the information so you can decide what's best for you. And I just really hope you take up this life-changing opportunity. I hope you got some breakthroughs in this video, and hope you have a beautiful day. You know how to reach me. Talk to you soon. Get those boundaries. Get that courageous love.